And of course, we'll be starting off with the inevitable happening officially real soon. On Monday, July 1st of 2024, we'll be seeing USC, UCLA, the Oregon Donald Ducks, and the Washington Huskies joining the Big Ten. What is your take on that so far?
Well, yeah, this is a $64,000 question because there's so many different ways, really, that you can come at this. And the first thing I will say that kind of leads into my introduction, so to speak, is like I'm a Midwestern guy, and when you think of Big Ten football, and it could be you, an Alabama fan, it could be a South Carolina fan, it could be a Boston College fan, but we've all kind of got an idea of what Big Ten football is. It's defense, it's O-line, it's running game, it's toughness, it's physicality. A lot of people maybe have thrown some shade at the Big Ten West, and rightfully so, right? Not a lot of offense, but they're definitely better in the interior, and they're definitely better in the trenches. That's kind of what you think of when you think of Big Ten football. But now, all of a sudden, you have West Coast programs. Let's look at last year for all these teams. Washington, right, made it to the national championship. Michael Penix and a generational wide receiver room. Oh, that's a little bit different. That's not very Big Ten-y, right, so to speak. Look at Oregon, right? Statistically, they were the best offense in college football last year. And when you think of Oregon, right, you think of, what do you think of? I think of usually two things: explosive offense and flashy uniforms. That's not exactly the first thing of when you think of the Big Ten. So that's a little bit different as well. And then you go down to Hollywood, the glitz and glamour of Los Angeles. Once again, you look at the college towns, the blue-collar towns of Bloomington, Indiana. You look at Ann Arbor, Michigan. You look at Madison, Wisconsin. You look at some of these towns, and LA's a little bit different, right? So there's so many different things culturally of what the Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12 was. Now, of course, the Big Ten and the Pac had a relationship with the Rose Bowl for a long period of time, but seeing these schools come in and having these, a lot of people have called them weekly Rose Bowl matchups, and having them, it's going to be a little bit of a culture shock, I think, for both sides, right? Because I think the traditional Big Ten teams are saying, whoa, that's a lot of offense. Okay. But then the West Coast teams are going to say, yeah, they got some big old farm boys up front. They got some physicality up front. So this clash of styles, lifestyles, football lifestyles, right? It's going to be so fascinating to watch. Styles make fights. I've heard that saying many times, and it's going to make for some fun battles like November 2nd when Oregon travels to Ann Arbor to take on the Michigan Wolverines. You're going to have a great offense, one of the best in the country, against the best defense, what could be in college football. Oregon plays Ohio State as well at the Autzen Stadium on October 12th. So there's so many, like there's a Friday night game early in the season when the Washington Huskies travel to Piscataway, New Jersey to take on a Rutgers team that could be pretty good.
And that could be, that's going to be a Big Ten game.
That's a Big Ten matchup, baby. That's a Big Ten matchup, not a Big East and Pac-10 crossover. That's a Big Ten matchup. Those are two styles, Washington and Rutgers, that clash big time. So it's going to be so fun to watch these matchups, interacting with all of these fans. There's West Coast fans that think they're going to throw for 800 yards and they're going to show the Big Ten, specifically West teams, what offense is all about. And then there's traditional Big Ten fans that say, okay, how's your trenches? How's your interior? Are you going to be able to go toe-to-toe with some of the best lines in America? So I cannot wait to see how this all unfolds.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I'm curious to see who's going to succeed in the short term and the long term out of the four. Because, I mean, right now it looks like Oregon's going to succeed in the short term out of everybody. UCLA's in big trouble, at least in college football. But who will succeed in the long term exactly?
I just posed this question out on Twitter. I posed it in terms of Oregon and USC. I didn't include the other two because when I look at these four West Coast teams, I see Oregon and USC, the history, resources. It just seems like they are going to be a notch above a program like a Washington and a UCLA. There were some comments. There was some split as to, with Trojan fans, with Duck fans, and maybe some other Big Ten fans thrown in this as well. Short term, right now, 2024, Oregon is most ready to compete in the Big Ten Conference. Like, you look at what they have on the offensive line returning, you look at the defensive line, and just the way Dan Lanning has recruited, right, the last couple of seasons, he's stacking top 5, top 7 type of classes, and a lot of it is recruiting the interior, right, especially on the defense, which is his forte, which is his side of the football. So I look at Oregon, I look at their explosiveness on offense, I look at their skill players, I look at their talent, I look at the trenches, I look at everything. And they are a team. They're a playoff team at the least, I think, this year. I think this is a team that can make it to the Big Ten championship game. A lot of people are already slotting in the Ducks into that game. And I just say, let's pump the brakes a little bit, just a little bit. This is a great team. We all know and recognize that. But they got Ohio State on the schedule. They got Michigan on the schedule. They got Wisconsin on the road late. If Wisconsin can be a surprise team, who knows? This is college football. Why do you and I love it? Because of upsets. Anything can happen, it seems like, on any given Saturday. So let's not pencil in the Ducks just quite yet. USC is another interesting case study because prior to, 28 hours ago, I'd say, okay, they're starting to invest in defense. They're looking pretty good. They signed 2 5-stars out of the Southeast, and now both of them in a 24-hour period have decommitted. I think one of them, I think it was Justice Terry, decommitted, and you had an on-3 crystal ball, I believe, from Steve Wiltfong that says, oh, yeah, he's going to Georgia. So I kind of figured when these commitments happened in March, this was not going to be the end of the story. Kirby Smart was not going to take this lion down. When you go into the state and take some 5-stars on the defensive side of the football. So USC needs to have that investment and commitment in the trenches on the defense. We know they got the offensive side of the ball figured out. We know what Lincoln Riley can do, slinging the football around and Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and all that. You look at Washington, there's just so much turnover. I hate to say it this way, but when I look at Washington, I see a lot of that TCU team when they lost to Georgia in the championship, and they lost everybody coming back. And what was their record last year? Did they make a bowl game? 5-7, 6-6? 5-7. Okay, so I see very similar. I look at Washington's schedule. I think they could get out to a good start, but you look down the stretch and you see it gets a little bit tougher, and it gets a little bit tougher. And there's some people that are out there that are predicting 6-6. I'm around the 6-7 win range right now for Washington in the short term. UCLA they got some pieces. But overall, yeah, their team might struggle this year with Deshaun Foster. But Deshaun Foster has been doing work on the recruiting trail. He's been doing really good. That's obviously not something Chip Kelly really invested into. So for him to do that, Eric Bieniemy, I'm sure, is very attractive as the offensive coordinator, right? Former OC for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So they got that as well. I would just keep an eye on UCLA. I'm not saying that they're going to win 9 or 10 games in a couple of years. I just keep an eye on them. To maybe get into that third tier or somewhere like that, where the Wisconsins have lived, where the Iowas have lived, and schools like that. So that's what I would watch out for UCLA. And you look at long term, if the Bruins, can keep up this recruiting and keep on improving, they might be a team to watch out for. The thing about UCLA is they got a coach that wants to be there. All right, I think towards the end we kind of figured Chip Kelly just didn't want to be there. Deshaun Foster is UCLA tried and true. He's Westwood tried and true. He's all about the 4 letters. So I think that's important, and then be able to build off that passion. Long term for USC. So they got their quarterback in Juju Lewis, right? He recently visited Auburn, visited Indiana. He's visited a bunch of schools, but he remains committed to USC when he does these interviews. So USC is an interesting one. I really liked with the direction they were going, right, recruiting-wise in the 25 class with a couple of 5-star defensive linemen. Now that has flipped the other way, I'm still kind of formulating my thoughts on what their future looks like. Because if they don't have great talent in the trenches and on defense, I don't know if this team can get to that Big Ten championship type of level. I think they can be good. I think they can win 8 games, 9 games, win 10 games, maybe be a playoff team. But I think USC fans strive for a higher level than that. So they got to figure that out. The great thing is Eric Henderson, their defensive line coach, was the D-line coach with the LA Rams. it's all about development this year, right? It's all about proving that this staff defensively can develop talent. Some of these guys like the Bear Alexanders and others up front into great talent. And then when I look at Oregon long-term, I mean, Dan Lanning he's doing it. It is spicy on the recruiting trail for the Oregon Ducks. They are set. They got Dante Moore at quarterback. They got Achilles Smith Jr. at quarterback because the class of 25 guy currently at the Elite 11 finals in Los Angeles. So they're doing things, right? Oregon is going to be in that mix with the Michigans, with the Ohio States, with the Penn States, teams like that are going to be in the mix every single year for the Big Ten championship and a college football playoff spot. So I look at Oregon, I look at USC as maybe those teams. And when you look at Washington, okay, they have, I'm going to take a vacation out to Washington in the summer, and the research that I've done, there's a lot of mountains, there's a lot of valleys, peaks and valleys. That's been Washington football for the better part of a couple of decades. They will peak like last year, right? Going to the national championship game. But then you have years that you had under Jimmy Lake. You had, was it a Ty Willingham team that went 0-12? So man, you go down, you come back up. You go down, you cut. That's been Washington football, right? It's so. Will that happen under Jed Fish? To be determined. What happens if, kind of in your neck of the woods, what happened if things don't work out for Billy Napier this year and Jed Fish has a great year? He goes 8-4, maybe they go 9-3. That's the alma mater for Jed, is just sitting out there. That's why I thought maybe he'd stick around at Arizona for one more year and wait out the Florida opening, but here he is at Washington. So, and Washington, man, they lost their president, they lost their athletic director, they lost their football coach, and now they're entering a new conference. So they're riding the roller coaster over there.
Man, it's going to be interesting to see what happens for Washington going into 2024. Yeah. But I hope they don't have a losing season like TCU did last season.
Boy, that would be going.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, going to 5-7. That's hard for me to believe with what they have. Like Will Rogers, down in SEC country, put up some really good numbers in Mike Leach's system. Okay. Like you've got a good pair of running backs in Jonah Coleman coming over from Arizona, Cam Davis. Like they've got good skill players and talent. 5-7 seems a little bit far-fetched to me. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, because it could, because they're replacing some things on the offensive line and the defensive line. Like I said, I think they seem to be hanging around 6 to 7 wins for me. But yeah, dropping to 5 wins, that'd be tough. And 6 or 7 wins, Washington fans shouldn't be upset about that. Just like USC fans shouldn't be upset if they only win 8 games this year. Like transitioning to a new conference is not easy. One team out of all the ads the Big Ten has had since 1993, when Penn State joined the conference. Okay, only one team has been really able to come in and establish their own right away, and it was Penn State. Okay, they went 1994. Okay, their second year in the conference. They shared a national championship with Nebraska that season. So everybody else, you look at Nebraska when they came in, they were solid. They weren't bad, but they didn't get to that top type of level. And then Rutgers and Maryland were towards the bottom when they came in. So it's tough to come into a new conference, especially when you're going from the West Coast style of play to the Big Ten style of play. It's going to be a tough transition. Okay. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be so fun to watch.